Tonight I'd like to talk about a phenomenon that has been observed in the, at least American Catholic Church, but maybe the church at large for the last several years. It's credited to a man named Christian Smith, who's a professor at Notre Dame. And I want to discuss it not just to complain about the state of the church today, or here's all the problems without fixing them, but just it's important to be able to diagnose problems and to see patterns so that we can identify them, one, in our own lives and see where we're falling into some of these traps, but also to help to move forward with the church and to really recapture what we're meant to be. And so the phenomenon is called Moralistic Therapeutic Deism. And the term isn't necessarily important. It kind of just describes what it is. And there's 5 parts of this phenomenon, this moralistic therapeutic deism. And it's what they've observed among teenagers. Specifically, they did a study with all these teenagers and young adults across Christianity and a number of other world religions, and they saw, specifically Christians, that there's these things that describe the way people are viewing religion, Christianity, in the modern day. But I think in learning about this and observing it, I think it's more than just teenagers and young adults. I think it bleeds into all aspects, all areas of the church. And so what are the 5 aspects of this moralistic therapeutic deism, this version of Christianity that many people subscribe to today without maybe necessarily realizing it? So the first is that there's a God who exists, and he created the world, and he ordered the world, and he watches over all human life on earth. Number 2, this God wants people to be good, nice, and fair to each other, which is taught by many world religions and taught in the Bible. To be nice, good, fair, and nice to each other. Number 3, the central goal in life is to be happy and to feel good about oneself. Number 4, God does not need to be particularly involved in someone's life except when he is needed to resolve a problem. And number 5, good people go to heaven when they die. So there it is, the 5 aspects of this moralistic therapeutic deism, this version of Christianity that we can see all throughout the church, I think especially in the American church. And so it really is, like I said, the term kind of describes itself, that it's moralistic in the terms that it looks at right and wrong, good and bad. That's what it's concerned about, whether you're good or you're bad. That's kind of what it's limited to. That it's therapeutic in the sense that it's meant to make us feel good about ourselves, meant to make us be okay, and that God is a therapist. He wants to solve our problems. And that it's deism. And deism dates back centuries to even before the birth of Christ. That deism, all it says is that there's a God, and he did create the world, but he's not involved in the world in a day-to-day sense. There's no relationship with God. He kind of, the clockmaker God is what he's considered, is he created the universe and he wound up the clock, and then he kind of let it go, and everything is unraveling as he designed. But there's no relationship to be had with God. And so in this religion of sorts, Jesus is just a mascot for what they say, is that he's the one who lived this out best. He's the one who is there to root us on and to provide an example for us. And so it gets rid of the miraculous parts of Jesus. It gets rid of the sacrifice that Jesus made. It's very much a result of a lot of modern philosophy, the modern era of human development from the Enlightenment. And what's left over when you get rid of the miracles and you get rid of the sacrifice and the worship, well, what's left over is that it's just ethics. And Jesus is a great moral teacher that spurns us on, and he's this spirit of what a good human person is. That you're nice, you're kind, you're respectful, you're responsible, you work at self-improvement, you take care of your health, you do your best to be successful. And you can see the attraction to such a religion, that it's right, there's nothing wrong about therapy or about believing in God and wanting human flourishing, wanting us to succeed in life, wanting us to be happy, wanting us to thrive, to flourish. Those are all good things. But the reason why it's a problem is because it strips so much away from the beauty of Christianity. When I look around at all the things in Christianity, specifically the Catholic Church, there's all these amazing things: the sacraments, the saints, all the teachings, all from her life of prayer, liturgy, all these things, and it strips those away and restricts it to this ethical system in a way that God is sort of involved with. And the Catholic Church, of course, doesn't necessarily do these 5 things super well, at least as judged by the world, right? To be good, nice, fair to each other. Well, they say Catholics are, we're not fair, we're judgmental, we're certainly not nice to everyone. There's, all it takes to get to heaven is just be a good person, and that God isn't involved really in our life except when we need Him. And so if you insist on maintaining any sort of religion that has rites, rituals, teachings that are demanding in some way, well, you're passed off as a Pharisee, as someone who just cares about the ritual. And so it's this transformation of Christian theology and belief, and it replaces God's sovereignty, God's role as not only just as creator, but as ruler, as Lord, as Savior, and it replaces it with really self-improvement, the sovereignty of the person, of the subject, that I can do whatever I need to do to improve and to thrive, and that God is there to help me along the way. But again, there's no relationship necessarily to be had there. And we do live in a very therapeutic age, and please do not hear what I'm not saying. Therapy is a good thing. Therapy is a very good thing. I know countless, in seminary we have opportunities to go to counseling and therapy if needed. And there's so many good things about therapy. So this is not me saying that get rid of therapy. But oftentimes human problems are reduced to some sort of need for treatment. Again, in good ways. But oftentimes sin, personal responsibility, the ability to truly heal and change at a core level sometimes is excluded, and that turns God into some wrathful, vengeful God who has a terrible idea and sense of justice. And so that God who just judges me gets in the way of my own ability to self-actualize and to get to where I want to be. And we might recognize that while this moralistic therapeutic deism sounds good, it's trapping, it's enslaving in some way, where I now need to make my own meaning. And what happens when I don't get there? I've experienced that in my own life, certainly, of creating my own meaning or saying this is going to be the solution to the problems that I'm having, and it doesn't happen, and then you're left with, well, now what? Instead of finding yourself playing out your life within the providence and plan of God, what many theologians have called the theodrama, the play, the the life that God is living out and that we are participating in, instead of the one that's centered on us. And this aspect, I think we're in some ways reaping what we sow, because we've reduced Catholicism to a hobby or a side project or something that you do on the weekends, not as some sort of worldview or full life system, right? And so teenagers and young adults who we say this is what they believe in, this deism, that all they've done is they've observed how the church has acted in the past, let's say 50 years, probably longer. That people don't really believe what the church teaches, a rejection of authority, that we've catered to the culture in many ways, in good attempts, right? None of this is malicious I want to say no, not malicious in any way. I'm sure maybe there's some people who have brought some sort of bad aspects to it, but it's not trying to bring down the church from the inside or trying to ruin religion, right? It's the attempt to reach out to the culture it's a good intention, right? To want to take these parts of culture and be able to dialogue with them and inject them. That's the way that church has existed for many years, from the beginning of how do we adapt the culture to the church? How do we bring the church into the culture? But when we start adapting the things of the culture, where it's I make my own meaning, the virtues are tolerance and niceness and fairness, well then this is, we get this where the sacrificial, the worship aspects of Christianity are forgotten about and seen as not necessary. And seen as not necessary. And the reason why I have been thinking a lot about this recently is I just finished a book by C.S. Lewis called The Great Divorce. Perhaps you've read it, or at least heard about it. If you haven't read it, highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. It's called The Great Divorce, again, by C.S. Lewis. It's not long, perhaps 100 pages, and it's C.S. Lewis, so it's very, very readable. I think I finished it pretty quick. But it's all about his view, a view of his that he has of heaven and hell. And this deism, I think, affects how we view heaven. And it's skewed many of our views of heaven, even my view of heaven, right? What are we actually going to do there? What's heaven look like? And again, if heaven is just the place where good people go when they die as some sort of reward for their good life on earth, it's fine. It is a reward in a way, the treasure in heaven. There is a rewarding aspect to it, of course. But it's not just you played by the rules, you did well, perhaps you suffered enough, and here's your reward, is to be in heaven. So here, heaven is seen as reward for good behavior, the icing on the cake for life well lived, the crowning achievement. Instead of what heaven truly is, and that's life with Jesus and God and the Trinity and the saints forever, and union with them forever. And it's this, heaven is about seeking, it's about happiness, it's about being fulfilled. And everyone's seeking this out. From the Aristotle, before Jesus was even around, the Greeks were talking about this, that the goal of human life is to be happy. But of course, what do we want? What actually leads to happiness? And what we view heaven as is a place where you can choose your own pleasures, where if you're active on earth, well, there's mountains to climb in heaven, and there's things to see and things to do. If you're a man or a woman of art and literature, well, you can paint to your heart's content, and do all these great things, right? The pleasures you had on earth will be what you do in heaven, and it's just brought to another level. And it sounds great. It does sound very nice. And I think there's aspects of heaven that will incorporate that, of the heightened things we did on earth, and having our questions answered, and experiencing these good things with the people we loved on earth and are united with in heaven. But when I look at my own life and the patterns of the pleasures that I have on earth, right, things that bring me at least some sort of happiness on earth, oftentimes are fleeting, and oftentimes I don't want that to be what I experience forever in heaven, right? The watching Netflix whenever I want, or the eating ice cream, or the watching the Cubs games, which was probably for many years more of a hell than a heaven. But I see that, I'm like, I don't want that to be heaven. That just doesn't sound forever. I don't want that to be the forever thing, right? It's even on earth. There's a way of not satisfying. Even that in 2016, when I was walking to Wrigley Field after the Cubs won the World Series, one of the happiest moments of my life. But even then, as I was doing it, I'm walking there. I said, "Is this it?" After laughing and crying and whatever I did, probably threw my beer everywhere. Is this it? Even in that moment, walking to Wrigley Field, is this it? And so, The Great Divorce, the book, why I brought it up, is that it addresses what C.S. Lewis sees heaven truly as, and its comparison to hell. And the idea is that for him, hell is locked from the inside. That the people, they don't want heaven coming in. They're fine there. They're happy in hell. I shouldn't say they're happy in hell. They're fine with being there. It's what they want. It's what they chose. They can't. There's things about heaven that they don't want to be a part of. For example, there's so that just to describe how they do it. It's the narrator, the person writing the book, finds himself on a bus that's going from hell up to heaven. And when he's there, he experiences that the people that are coming from hell are kind of ghost-like. They're not fully real. And they have conversations with the citizens of heaven who are coming to engage with these people who are coming up from hell. And he overhears and he experiences a bunch of conversations between the citizens of heaven and the people who are currently in hell. And one of them he overhears is this guy who on earth was a self-described good person, and he's talking with an employee of his, a former employee of his on earth, who was thrown in jail for being a murderer. And he cannot wrap his mind around the fact that this murderer is in heaven and he is not. And for him, that makes heaven a place where he just doesn't want to be. How could it be? If you're here, then it doesn't make any sense to him. He was a good person. He deserves heaven. His due is heaven. And how could this? Not only this murderer is heaven, but he's the one who's reaching out to help this guy get to heaven. He can't have it. He doesn't see it. And you can see the deism there. He's like, well, good people go to heaven. That's just what happens. And the narrator observes that the demand of the loveless and self-imprisoned as they should be allowed is that they should be allowed to blackmail the universe. That till they consent to be happy on their own terms, no one else shall taste joy. That theirs shall be the final power, that hell should be able to veto heaven. That they are able to impose what they want, right? They want heaven on their own terms. They want heaven exactly how they pictured it. They want certain people there, they want certain things there, and until those things are met, well, they have those things in hell. Maybe it's not the best thing, but at least they have those things that they want. And so it really brings to mind this quote that I once heard. I don't remember where I heard it, but it says this: if your heaven requires that some other person must be excluded from heaven, then you're not ready for heaven. When I first heard it, I was like, it was a huge gut check. The sense of, if my version of heaven, if when I get to heaven, if I saw this person there, I would be angry, or I'm like, I don't want to be here. Well, then I'm not ready for heaven. That person's there, existing, being with God forever. And it speaks to this. We have a very retributive, our justice system. It's getting what you deserve. There's condemnation without any hope of forgiveness. But God's mercy, of course, works in a very different way, a much more radical way, and in a way very scandalous to many of us. The idea that for this guy, this murderer was in heaven, and he was not. He couldn't understand it. He couldn't understand it. And it's something that I do pray with a lot. That idea of, what is heaven going to be like? What do I want it to be? And again, once I start talking about that, what do I want it to be? I know I'm probably already off on the wrong track. But it does allow me to contemplate and meditate on the God's mercy and the scandalousness of God's mercy, and the fact that it's able to reach out to anyone who repents and truly wants to be with God, because God respects the choice. That's perhaps C.S. Lewis's main point of the book, The Great Divorce, is that he respects the choice that people make through their lives on earth, through what they make priorities, through what they continue that on into the afterlife. Again, this is exactly what happens. It's not a theologically 100% accurate book. It's just a way of thinking of heaven and hell in a different way that can maybe allow us to play with some different ideas. But I think this is the money quote from the book, if you will. There are only two kinds of people in the end: those who say to God, "Thy will be done," and those to whom God says, in the end, "Thy will be done." I'm literally getting chills from that quote, just reading it out loud again. It really is, that's it. That if we want no part of God or what God wants to offer us, then he says, fine. And theologians throughout the centuries have discussed this in the sense that, for someone who doesn't want to be with God, heaven would be torturous. They wouldn't want to be there. St. John Henry Newman, really, there's several sermons, several homilies where he talks about this. You can read them. I think it's just Sermon 1, the first sermon in his big collection of sermons, that just talks about, holiness is being set apart, and if you don't want that, then being in heaven you're not going to want to be there. Lewis also says that the choice of every lost soul can be expressed in the words, "Better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven." Those two quotes are very interlocked. The whole idea of "Thy will be done," whether it's us saying it to God or God saying it to us, and then us choosing something other than him. I will not serve. That's the rallying cry for hell. I will not serve. And so we see this, I see this moralistic therapeutic deism, this system of belief that many people subscribe to these days, their version of religion, playing all throughout this and leading to this view of heaven as a place that, if it's not catered to my needs, then I don't want to be there. Good people go to heaven, and I'll be rewarded there. And sometimes that plays out even into the way we do religion. And it's just a matter of passing down ideas and passing down beliefs. Those are good things, of course, but that it's try to be an efficient way, that when we evangelize or we do teaching or catechesis, it's just, what can we pass on? What are the programs we can use? What is the most efficient way for getting this? And there's a number of different groups doing a number of great things, but no program can possibly hope to solve all the problems that are facing the church in terms of evangelizing the world and getting the message out into the world, where it seems like it's getting smaller and smaller and less, and society is becoming more and more rotten. And so it's in that pushing back against that, this day is just a few things that could potentially help. Again, this is not me trying to solve the problems of this system. Again, I mention it to help to get us thinking about, how do we, is this a way, do we approach religion in some of these ways? Again, I know I do. Do we approach heaven in some of these ways? Again, I'm almost speaking to myself here. Reminding myself, telling myself, here's the truth. What are you going to do with it? And so I think the main way that I would want to see, if I could set up a parish, set up the way we live in a certain way, it would be maximizing the opportunities of sharing life together, whether that's through small group communities, whether that's through families getting together, all different generations, people just getting together. And instead of telling each other about the good things or telling each other about the right and the wrong or the teachings, it's just showing it and sharing that life together, actually doing these things together in community. We're in the image and likeness of God. God's primarily a relationship, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. We're made for relationship, and so we share that life with others. And from that is just ways, again, that we call out of ourselves. We're called out of ourselves, whether that's through, again, sharing life together, whether that's through beauty, whether that's through narrative and the ability to engage in stories and the theodrama, as I said, the providence of God. Right? We're so drawn into a good story, even if it's not real. It still speaks to us in some way, of some truth. And the Bible can be read in that way, in this narrative way of drawing us up into the story. Liturgy is another way of, again, bringing us out of ourselves. It's primarily a public thing. It's communal. It's bringing us together. It's not catered to our own needs. And I know in Chicago there's, 300, I guess it's shrinking down a little bit, but a few hundred churches where you can go and have a very catered worship experience. And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to a place that you find comfortable and you like worshiping there, but it's not, again, primarily about catering to our own needs. We're getting called out to ourselves, right? Liturgy should be the closest we get to heaven. Again, heaven as Lewis describes it, on earth. Right? We don't do it perfectly, of course. It's not possible to do it perfectly. But again, it's an opportunity to draw us out of ourselves. Finding the ways to serve God better and find the ways to serve others better. So I want to end here with just a short prayer by St. Augustine that I hope brings together this call to come out of ourselves, to seek God on His terms, not on our own, to see Christianity and God and the church is so much more than what this deism wants it to be. This reductionist, this small, this lame. I'll call it lame because it is pretty lame. And to recognize the greatness that Christianity can be, that this community can be, that the church can be. So this prayer, again, is by St. Augustine. O Lord, you command me to ask. Grant that I may receive what you give. You have told me to seek. Let me be happy in finding. You have bidden me to knock. I pray, open for me. Graciously direct and govern all my thoughts and actions, that for the future I may serve you and entirely devote myself to obeying you. Accept me and draw me to yourself, that I may henceforth be yours by obedience and love, since I am already yours as your creature. Yours, O Lord, you live and reign forever and ever. Amen.